Thanks for staying with us. So, on the show today, we will be talking about the wrongful behavior of children who beat their parents, elder siblings, elder relatives, and neighbors. This appalling behavior has nothing to do with drugs or alcohol addiction, as we tried to imply yesterday. It is just a way of life for many. This negative attitude has really eaten deep in many homes, giving most parents sleepless nights all the time. Yesterday, we tried to start this conversation, but it was easy for us to move it to drug abuse, alcohol, being the reasons why these children behave this way. But there are some cases where parents are frustrated that though their children don't do drugs, but they have become so unruly and uncontrollable. How do we have this conversation around helping parents in this situation today? Much later on the show, we're bringing in one of our friends of the house is a coach, Mr. Theo Akatuba, later on, and also a parenting and child expert, Mr. Femi Adekunle, at some point will be joining us on the show to engage us on this conversation. But first, we'd like to hear your thoughts. You can call us on the numbers on your screen, 08127053687, 09139076948. You can also tweet to us at TVC Connect. Please hashtag your TVC so we can read your tweets. Okay, so when I tried having this conversation sometimes, people were saying, you see, because the world of social media, again, has somewhat magnified these things. But in the past, we've had these situations happen. I remember one of the, I have a brother, Brashegun. He talks about the fact that there was a time that he and daddy used to have to fight because when they're engaging each other, daddy wants to show him that, so you think you can talk, Abi? I will wear my shorts and I will engage you. Now, both of them, of course, he can't hit my dad, but the fact that daddy even wore his shorts to engage him was enough fear that, is this man going to beat me up? But you see, that was then. But now, it has gone beyond that, where children are actually engaging. When you think you want to fight and defend yourself with your parents, now, they are actually beating their parents up. What do you think went wrong? And let's start with the origin of this, and then we'll come to how we can help these parents resolve this, what they can do. Let me start with Nima.
Okay, so I think that some examples I have seen, though, is from childhood, from toddler age. Violence. I remember just yesterday evening, I was cautioning a 2-year-old who wanted something sweet, and her grandmother was like, they've gone to get it, but she didn't understand. So she kept hitting on her grandmother as if it was normal. So because, the hitting is a toddler's hand now, you just be like, oh, no, it's okay. But I said, it's the action that needs to be corrected. So I said to her, while I'm here, if you do it again, I'm getting a cane, and that thing they're buying for you, I will take it to my house. I will beat you silly. I once came home to my niece, waking my dad up, and, the way she was with my granddad, he was always hyping her first lady and all of that. She was seriously beating my dad. And I was like, So like, it's my grandpa. I said, okay, now this is my own dad. I got a cane and I beat her silly. I said to her, the circle must not continue. I did beat sense for picking head, the normal thing. The circle cannot, that's not your means of communication with grandpa. If you need something, you wait for grandpa, you must learn the tone. Because I've never seen my own children do that to their grandparents. It's not a sign. It's something I would never accommodate. And, when we start like that and we are liberal with kids, then they grow up thinking it's okay to sort of do certain things like that. Some people think, they're too small to be corrected. Then when you now grow up, you will see all sorts of absurdities. It's not drugs. We know that there are certain incidents that might have happened for a child to lose respect for an adult.
Let's
but when your child disrespects another adult and you as the parent think it's okay because it's not you yet, then you are starting a problem for yourself.
Thank you for taking us there. What can a parent do to lose respect of her child to the point where the child will start beating?
Well, don't let us go there. There are many things that can be in that place, but there's something Nima said, which is that you must nip it in the bud. There's another reason these things happen, which is the hate you see is the hate you would give. So if a child raised in a violent home, where daddy is beating mommy, mommy is jacking daddy's shirt, the younger ones are scoring in between to separate the fight, the likelihood of the day daddy raises hand means if I will raise hand and slap you back before you can't slap me the way you are slapping my mommy. No, I'll not go take him, I don't grow. that is likely going to happen. Because in this environment, in this household, we fight. That is what they've seen. It might not even be the parents themselves, some in extended family system, some in the neighborhood where there's so much violence. They've grown up to realize that if I sense anybody wants to treat me unfairly or any similitude of injustice towards my person, I will fight. Even if the person is my parent, you cannot beat me. Or we've seen injustice to our older ones who they were beaten as adults. There's a video that trended online of a full-grown person. Not that the girl was saying, she was crying online that she's been beaten by her parents as an adult. A younger person in that space might revolt towards that high-handedness of beating and say, before you beat me the way you are beating my senior sister, I will beat Shege in your body so they will not touch my own body, you know. So those things can also...
So let's stick on that. Children, how we raise our children. Yeah. How do we begin to monitor it and correct it and nip it in the bud?
What can I say? You know, sometimes when these things do not happen to you or around you, it's hard to relate. I remember growing up in my grandma's area. This is a place where we would say majorly, on the average, people were not doing so well materially. You would call it maybe an underprivileged, underserved community like that. And then, so you think you would find this sort of behavior more rampant within this environment, but I don't remember seeing that. The few cases where it happened, I remember my grandma describing these people as uncivilized, lacking of home training, and even not having God in their lives. That's how she would describe. So they were not, it was not about the circumstances of, you know, living in Nigeria or no money. It was just the fact that they can't be believers. They don't believe in God. They haven't been raised right, you know. And so that's how I've always looked at it. But I know you don't want us to go the route of drug addiction. But I think it also has a lot to do with mental health issues. There are some families where everybody acts normal. They would express their, you know, disagreement in a normal way, but there's one child who's been raised the same way, shown the same principles of communication, but carries, you know, has an anger issues and carries things, you know, further than they should. So in discussing, it used to be easier to discuss this and say, no, that's just a bad child. Beat that child. That child comes from bad parents. That parent needs to, you know, change the way that they are raising their child. But the truth is, mental health issues are real. There are people that they are struggling in their brain. They don't even know how to express themselves, and in that way, they, you know, explode. So in raising our children, it's important that we incorporate therapy. We incorporate sitting down, having conversations, and understanding things just beyond the surface level. We have beaten children that did not need beating so hard, and it just became worse because we did not consider that this might be a mental health issue.
You know, as we become more and more enlightened, you know, back then, we didn't have so much exposure. So your parents beat you up. You can't even think, you can't even phantom trying to revolt. It doesn't even come to your mind. But this new age, kids are seeing, they are making decisions.
We dodge the case.
They are feeling that, listen, they can make independent decisions of, okay, I like you, I don't like you, I like my mom, I don't like my dad. They can say, this, I don't like you because of this, you know. And once they feel that they are being attacked, they feel they have the right to defend themselves.
No, I don't agree with you that in present age, there are more children that are attacking their parents. I don't agree.
They have that disposition of, I have confidence and independence.
Yes,
and they have an opinion.
I don't agree with you that there are more children that are hitting their parents or coming close to hitting their parents. In fact, what I would say to you, what I agree is that there are more children and parents understanding that you can have communication. So children are not afraid to communicate. Children who are also brought up right and taught the principles of proper communication are doing it. So you have your children who are more confident to express themselves. I saw a short clip yesterday, and a mother was trying to explain the difference between permissive parenting and what she calls gentle parenting. And she says it's important to keep talking about it because the lines are getting blurred. So she said to her child to do something, like a chore in the house. And the first response he said to her was, "That's not my job." She says, "Hold up," right? And she said, she gave him an opportunity to say it the right way. And he said, I don't think it's fair for me to do this. After all, it's someone else's responsibility. I have mine that I do. And she said the reason she gave him a chance to explain himself, one, this exposure that we have now. She understands he's a teenager, he's growing up developmentally. There are some things he has to, it's not impulse for him. He has to sort of think through what he says before he can explain himself. What we would have done before is slap the living daylights out of that child. But now we understand, we'll give you an opportunity, and then the child corrected himself. I used the wrong words, but that was not my intention. So you have children speak up, and you also have children who are getting older, understanding that I can express my disagreement in a respectful way. But getting to punch parents and fight with parents, that is not because parents are now more exposed and allowing their children express themselves.
Let me rephrase that, because I want you to land with the point. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The children today, that is the kind of mindset they have. But there are some children that have that disposition to say, you know what, maybe based on different factors. Now, those children, because of the age we are in, also enables them somewhat. Something that even back then, we had the good kids, we had the bad kids. Those bad kids, there are certain, no, okay, let me not say bad kids. They're different kind of children, right? So depending on how you were raised, you know how to handle certain situations. Some choose left, some choose right. So in that same situation, there are some kids that even though they have the right options to express themselves, they'll rather go violent in different ways. But they're not all children.
I was a child that was very angry growing up. I had a mind of my own. So if you're fighting my mother, I'm fighting you. If you're somebody that I will carry everything. So I had an incident when my neighbor had insulted my mom. So she's Yoruba. She would say so many caustic things in Yoruba. She sings all those songs about my mom. And my mother would just not react. And in my Voltron defense, I thought, why not? So one of such incidents, I abused the woman very well. And I stopped greeting her. And so when my mom decided to go and, resolve with her, she referred to my character as an issue. That, one of the days she was talking, this small one was responding to me. My mom did not take it lightly with me. Even though I thought I was doing something in my mother's defense, for 2 weeks she wouldn't talk to me in the house. She said, that's not who I'm raising. I'm not going to raise my child to talk to the elders wrongly. And I said, but the woman was unfair. On one of such incidents when she was not at home, she called us names, and that's such of. I said, no, she cannot get away with it. My mother said, it is not in your place to decide that response. It is me who has the issue, and if I choose to neglect it, you must neglect it too, and it's not in your place not to greet. So what my mother did was address her own, the kind of child she was raising. For some people, they say, hey, good, if dada cannot fight, if you have senior, you allow a child grow with that mentality, thinking it's okay to insult any elder. Some of the things that you're explaining are things that happened in, when we come back, we'll go on your break.
Let me go to a break. There's a part of this that people also say, karma. If you hit your own parents, there's a possibility that your own children will also. Children beating up their parents. And as I said earlier, we're going to bring in some experts to help us know how to deal with it. So they'll be bringing on the solution part. We're trying to analyze what could cause this. And I asked the question earlier. I said that, what can a parent do to a child that will make that child lose respect for that parent to the point where he or she can beat up the parent?
So
what could you
it is not new that children beat up parents. It's not a modern thing. It has happened abnormally. We call it an abnormal thing, but it has happened over time. So in our parents' time, they will have one example of a child who think to stand up to their parents. It's now that we are enlightened, we'll say maybe there was a trauma the child experienced. There was one I saw growing up where the boy actually stood up to his dad and actually made sure he gave him a pumetin to the point the father fainted. But what he did was put an end to domestic violence in his family forever.
So is that acceptable? Let me pause.
He was made to do traditional fine. So I don't think it was acceptable. But he
even then
defended it with everything he had. That he had always watched the dad beat the mother to submission. Pregnant, after cooking, everything, and he lodged it in the house. And so he hated it. So he started by speaking up against it. But the father never could beat him because he grew up faster with the muscles than the dad. And so when he thought the father was just not talking, listening to him, one thing led to another. When the mom was beaten in front of him, he saw his mom in blood and he attacked the dad.
So in that case, using that example, is it therefore permissible for a child to beat up a father who is abusive to his mother? Because there's some time when you see your mother in the pool of her own blood, And you feel like somebody's got to teach this man a lesson.
So let me say, so it's not permissible, it's not acceptable, and it's wrong. But and just like, let me give an example: someone who murders somebody because they saw them raping a child. That you can sort of justify why that person went that far, but it's still a bad thing that he committed murder. See, in that particular instance where it's that you see your parent, one parent beating, especially mothers, I've seen that, where you're beating the mother consistently, the children are growing. In fact, even long before they are strong enough to fight the father, you know, they are already trying to engage. Leave my mom, you see the children, leave my mommy alone. And there's this situation I know of someone who said he left home because he knew that he was old enough, one punch and his dad would be dead. There's no how that he can continue to be in that same house and watching what was happening. It's not right, it's not permissible. In fact, for me, I feel that you have pushed your child to the point that they have lost any form of respect, not only for you, even for themselves. Like, when a child does that, I don't think there's any child that goes away feeling, yes, I showed him. They even feel sad that they had been put in that position to do that. You even find mothers that are so sad that we have done this to the point that we have made our child, you know, commit this atrocity, if you may. So there is that. Then there's the parenting part, which for me is, you know, you find, I think you sort of alluded to it, where you're saying a child behaves in a certain way. So the child is the one that has the mouth, that can talk, that can fight. And it's good. It's all good because it's not about you. This, your child is out insulting all the adult neighbors, insulting everybody, fighting with everybody. Like, yes, tell them. My child, even just my small daughter will deal with you. Then the day that it's your turn, the daughter will pounce on you. So there's something about being careful. For me, I always call it principles.
Yes.
The sort of principles you lay down. It may serve you while that person is facing someone else, but the truth is you have taught this person the only tools that they now know how to use, and they will turn around and use it on you.
Let me come to the top here, because I will stay on the domestic violence for a moment, because there's a situation where a single mother is proud that it was her son that defended her in the marriage. Now she has left the man. I've left that bad man. My son slapped his face, you know, and pushed him. And that day, from that day, he never, ever raised his hand against me again. And now she's happy by herself, and she's overjoyed, and she feels that now she has a son who's defending her. Is there a risk in that? I probably also ask the experts. I mean, is there a risk in that where you've allowed your child to beat up his father or mother?
I don't think it is the responsibility of your child to defend you. The truth is, your children have no business fighting for either parties in the house. Yeah. The two of you are one. They're supposed to see you, love you. Your responsibility is to defend the children, not the children defending one party against the other, not within the household.
That's not the norm.
That's not the norm. When a child already grows up in a violent home, the child is traumatized.
True.
That's trauma. There is a problem already psychologically. When a child is having to defend one parent against the other, there's already trauma. And sometimes it's not even physical. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and all you hear is one person insulting the other all through the day. Insult you, insult the children, tell you amount to nothing, tell the other person how useless they are. These are things, it's not physical violence, emotional violence that would make a child resent the parent so much that the day you now want to raise... In most cases, when the beating happens, is that the man feels like, I want to do something, then the child or the woman says, I want to do something, then the child gives it back. So except in the case of drug, would you have a child just come to the house and blatantly just drag the father or drag the mother? In most cases, there must have been an altercation that was about to lead to violence where the child retaliates in violence. Such woman is also traumatized. You see, we don't talk enough about trauma. We don't talk enough about emotional damage and its impact on our decision-making. For a woman to be happy that my son or my daughter defended me violently against my husband, that woman is already in a traumatic place. And every decision or word she says is not a true reflection of how a normal person should think. So we cannot even judge based on that. The woman should go for therapy, take the children for therapy. They should have a long conversation on conflict resolution and peaceful ways to ease their emotion.
Let's talk about deadbeat dads, where they're not economically empowered or irresponsible. Some actually, it's not their fault. They lost their job, maybe they used to live in a certain community, and then because they lost their job, things just went down, and obviously father goes into depression, and things can happen, and things happen to people, and there you have the children frustrated, they don't know how to express their anger, and then they maybe start with verbal engaging of their parents. After a while, they start pushing. It starts with a push, or leave me alone, from a push to a hit. Before you know it, you're beating up your parents, But things get degenerate sometimes. So it's not as if the intention was ever to hit your dad, but it's that things, economic circumstances had changed in life where
I have never
everything
seen
just
where
degenerated.
the economics of a home leads a child to disrespect the dad. I've seen deadbeat dads that their kids love them to death. They love them back and forth, and they see that their mom is carrying the weight.
dad?
But the economic one that doesn't provide. We're talking economically.
No, okay.
But where the father shows the appreciation for the mom and doesn't provoke any form of violence, he's not going to get violence back. It's most unlikely. And for the example that you asked with the mom, who's now at peace because her son defended her, if the circle ends at where it happened, when it is never referred to, so that their children don't think it's an example, the karma will not come back. But if it's something you are proud of to the point you're talking about it, another child would most likely do it to that child who stood up in defense of you. So his children would most likely come around and beat him up as well. So these things are things that when they happen, they are abnormal, they happen and should end as soon as like a mistake that should never be repeated. So, for instance, the boy who deliberately planned that the next time I see my mom in this kind of state, I'm going to beat you. And he told the dad. And when he came home and saw his mom, he beat his dad. He felt sorry, but he said, this has to stop if you don't want this to continue happening. And that curbed the father. Because some people just grew up with their own damages, and you can't...
Are we saying that it's okay?
I'm saying it's okay.
Because he has acknowledged it.
He acknowledged it. He admitted it was wrong, but it was a necessity.
Yeah.
Because the mom was an orphan, she did not have a family for defense. And even she stood in that abuse because she didn't have a place to go to.
If you're married to a brute.
So, somebody had to end the circle. And he said it was sad that he had to do it. He will pay the fine, but it's something that will happen. So that was what people were saying to the man that you see where you have led yourself. We have been telling you stop beating this woman. Somebody go stand up. Say, you have brought an abnormal circle to the family to stop it. So some drastic things will happen, but they are not things that we will now be promoting.
Talking doesn't make it right.
Let me go on a break because I'd like to bring in Mr. Theo Akatugba right now to join the conversation, and also our guest from Abuja will also be joining the conversation to know how we can do, because there are parents today crying in silence because they don't know how to control the fact that their children, daughters and sons, have totally become uncontrollable. Beat them up, spend their money anyhow, destroy the home, destroy property. There's a report of a young man who took his father's car out of anger. He was about 17 years old. He took his father's, the most expensive car, drove out of the house, bashed it, dropped the key there, and walked back home because he was angry. We're still discussing this horrible act of children beating up their parents, and we'll be having two experts join us, a parenting and child expert, Mr. Femi Adekunle, and a life coach, Mr. Theo Akatugba. Let me start with Mr. Theo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and good
morning.
morning.
It's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here always.
Parenting, they say, is never ending. We keep learning every single day. The new data comes out, and we have new principles we have to learn just to raise the perfect children for society. But these deplorable acts of children beating up their parents, we discussed yesterday about drug abuse, and we know that can be a factor, and that's not our focus today. Our focus is just the continuous action of certain children just feel for different reasons. Either you feel that your parents are not financially worthy, or you feel that your parents are one of your parents is domestically abusing the other, or you feel that they've lost the respect you have for them, and you just don't care for them anymore. And then you confront them and you start to hit them. In your thoughts, what do you think could have started this, and how do we begin to fix it?
All right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. When I saw that topic, I was quite disturbed because it just came to me that something serious is happening. And the Bible says in Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived. Whatsoever a man soweth, he shall reap. That man or society. From the foundation of the earth, right from the time of creation, respect for parents is sacrosanct. And since we lost the foundation, the cultural orientation and upbringing of our people, the first thing we did is to distance ourselves from culture. Then we moved on to religion. We started distancing ourselves from religion. And we started using human ideologies and ideas. No. The only thing that can prevent a child from beating the father is fear of the consequence. Once that is out of the way, the children will beat the parents. So when you see them happening, it's just evidence that fear is out of the way. There's no consequence for action.
Ganga, I love the way.
When in the home, everyone misbehaves and there's no consequence for action. That is what has crept into our society, where even people beat up policemen. Because they have beaten up their parents either physically or in their mind.
So I like the idea of consequence beyond fear. I think when we use the word fear, I don't believe that I should be fearful of my parents. I feel like I should respect them, reverence them, you know, honor them, but not that it is out of fear. It is out of I respect my parents.
Not fear of the parents,
It's
the
fear of
the
the consequences
that you might go
you're
to
talking
jail, that you might lose something, that there's something. The fear is not for the parents, but
Papa is making a point.
yes. No, yes. That fear, don't be afraid of that fear. Fear is important. You must be afraid of some consequence not to do an act.
I get
Otherwise, someone can walk into the street and give you a slap because he knows there could be consequence. The reason why you see the West is so beautiful is because they fear the consequence of action. Not because they are better behaved, but they know if the law catches up, you can't escape. So they certainly behave better because of fear of law. Here in the society, we have moved gradually away from fear. We have been preaching love. Love is useless without fear.
Wait, just wait. Let me
we explain.
We have to expand on that. I need to write that down. But while I'm writing that down, let me invite our other. Love is useless without fear. We'll come to that in a moment. Let me welcome our other guest. Mr. Femi Adekunle, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. So, you've been discussing parents who have been beat up by their kids. I know you are also a parental expert and on this, and you can shed some light on the causes of these behavioral deficiency in children these days.
Okay, thanks once again for... Good morning, and thanks for having me here. It's my pleasure. Now, talking about the reasons or the causes for this aberrant behavior, I would say there are several causes. First and foremost, let me say by way of a prelude that these things that we see happening, it's not new. There's actually nothing new under the sun. Even in biblical times, everything we see happening in the society and in the family today happened in those times. However, what we see today has become exponentially expanded, okay, in magnitude. Number one, because of the explosion in population. Let me give an example. Things that we see or we saw happen, let's say 20 years ago, and we saw 5 of it happen. Now we see 100 of it happening. It's attributable to the growth in population, and secondly, the advent of social media has accentuated these things. We see it more because all of us are on social media, and so it appears as if these things are new. I, however, take the point that a lot of things have gotten worse compared to the days of our forefathers because values have been significantly eroded. Like the last speaker said, we have deviated from the good days of culture, right? And so, back to your question on what are the causes of all these things, there are several. And number one, the personality of the child, the personality of people plays a very significant role. If you look at children, for instance, if you have 4 children, you're likely to have different personality traits for the 4 of them. a phlegmatic child, for instance, will behave differently from a child who is choleric. A child that is phlegmatic can be said to be temperate in attitude and behavior and be more amenable to discipline by congenital configuration. However, a choleric child may be that child that may be difficult to manage because of his or her very nature. All right, and then you look at environmental factors, and this plays a very important role. When I say environmental factors, I will look at it from both internal factors and external. Internal talks about the role of parents in the upbringing of their children.
Right.
How do you upbring your children? How do you raise your children? What are the values you are impacting into them?
Right.
Like you guys have said while I was discussing earlier on, there are things, behaviors that children pick from the home. A man that slaps or beats his wife in the presence of his children is likely to raise children who will do similarly when they grow up and they get married. A whole lot of things.
Right.
And then externally, you see children pick up behavior from the neighborhood, from schools,
right.
from the larger society. And that's why it's important. I always emphasize intentional parenting, how that you should care, you should be concerned, you should be bothered, you should worry, you should be anxious about how your children pick up behavior from outside of your house. Right. What kind of schools do they attend? What kind of schools do you put them in? Do they attend boarding or day? What kind of friends do they make out there? How much of the values you are imparting into them are being eroded by the society out there? And then finally, I'll look at genetic factors, right? This is extremely also very important. There are some predispositions that we are exposed to that are innate and inborn. I mean, look at people who are psychopaths and sociopaths, for instance. These are guys who have some congenitality in the way they behave. Psychopaths, for instance, as psychologists would say, are born, while sociopaths are made. And this is extremely important. And so, if you have a sociopath who is a child, I mean, it's a matter of time. If you don't deploy very tough and good parenting styles on them, you are likely to have a child that might end up beating you because he's a sociopath, for crying out loud. And so we need to look at all of these things. Parenting styles also matter. You know, how are you parenting
Let me
your
pause
child?
you. Let me pause you for a second.
Are you an authoritarian parent? There are four styles.
Let me pause you for a second because I need to come back to the studio. Mr. Katuba, I mean, we've heard some fantastic points from our guests, giving us some reasons. I was really interested with the genetical part of it. You know, the sociopath is made and the psychopath is born. Those are interesting terminologies. So, but you said something. I'll still come back to him, but you said something. Love is useless without fear.
That's true.
Because we're going back to raising children. What do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, what I mean by that, when a person has no fear of a deity, has no fear of parental authority, both spiritual and physical, what is the use of
government?
What is the use of love? What is the use of biscuit? What is the use of the child loving you? What's the use of your love for a child who does not understand the foundation of life? You are standing on nothing. So love is useless. When someone has fear for deity, then he has fear for parents. It's now well with him to receive love. What is the meaning of love without the fear of consequence of action? So that's why I describe it as a yes.
So I love you, and I fear that if I don't love you, you leave me or something.
No,
I'm trying to understand.
You fear that.
Yes.
If you don't submit to your husband, there is a consequence in the relationship.
What kind of consequence?
Good.
Yeah,
the relationship will damage. You fear that.
Okay, so there's
Because
fear that
the
my
fact
marriage
that
might
you
break up.
yes, because your husband will react to your being unsubmissive one day, not now, maybe someday in future. He might even tell you that when it's too late, when you didn't expect it. He will tell you, you have been good, but you were not submissive.
Okay, I just don't want...
The same way a man who doesn't love a woman, the woman might endure, but she knows surely you don't love her. She lives with that pain. One day you will lose her. If not physically, you will lose her emotionally.
Okay. Can we just go back to parenting? So for
don't
Christians,
move
and I
away.
think Muslims as well,
Yeah.
the 10 Commandments that says, and
Honor thy father.
Yes, honor thy father and thy mother.
That
That your days will be long
Absolutely.
on the earth. So that's where I got that there's no love without fear.
No.
So there's no, if there are no consequences, however beautiful something is,
It's a lost.
good. So what has a parent who has raised a child well, proper upbringing, going to church, they know these words, they even say it as you're growing up, then a child turns into a terror in the house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What did they do?
Yes. What
They
did,
have taught love, they have taught consequences, they have put fear.
and then
still,
something still went wrong.
Yes.
Good. The child has a burden in his life because you have been well brought up, but you deviated by your choice. If he knows that the choice he's making has a consequence beyond his parental discipline, he will be. The reason we respect our father and our mother in their old age is not because they can beat us. It's because we fear a consequence. The reason why a man who doesn't beat his wife is not because beating the wife will not make him pleasured, because he fears the consequence. Those who do not know of the consequence, they do these things. That's why our...
It sounds deeper than...
Yes, in Leviticus, God said a child who curse or smite parents should be put to death.
That was a consequence.
Yes. Another part of the Bible says if a child failed to listen to his father and the father has made effort and he still continues to be so, the child should be brought out and be stoned to death. When you come to New Testament, we are further reminded that it is well to obey. So God Almighty knows that the moment a child disobeys father, he is out of the way. Because the earthly parent is the example of a deity you don't see.
So, earlier we had discussed people not brought up in that ideal environment, people that did not have the lessons about how to fear, they were not taught consequences. Someone who, the kind of family they were brought up in, it was violence that they've always seen. And at a point, violence was coming to them and they fought back and they felt relieved that I can finally get myself free by beating my parents. How would such a parent undo the damage, and how can that person who's been in that space prevent themselves from becoming a violent person?
Thank you. The first one is, nothing is ideal. It's difficult to find a perfect environment in this world. But if you remember, I started by talking about culture, because once you are born into a culture. What is the prevailing culture in the environment in which you are born? Before you even attempted to talk about a religion that is out of you, that you are accepted as a faith, you were born into a certain culture, even the animal kingdom, where you have the goats, the dogs. The goats have their culture within the same, and they intermingle. The dogs have their own culture. A goat will not allow a kid to beat the mother. So that doesn't even need any ideal upbringing. Your parents are fighting. If you already understand that father and mother are above me and I honor them, you won't interfere, because none of the two is below you to discipline.
It's not your place.
So it's not in your place. You are only to reconcile, keep pleading with them. I had a young lady who was in my school, a student, many years ago. Whenever they closed in Accra, Ghana, I used to see her loiter around the school after everyone has gone. This is not a kid. This is a lady of about 26 years. And I called her. Why are you always being as late to go home? She said, I don't want to go home, sir. My parents fight over everything. And I hate the sound. I hate their quarrel. So I want to go home when they have slept off. She's not attacking any one of them, but she's preventing herself, one way or the other, from being, affected by their lifestyle. But you continue to uphold them in honor, because honor your father and your mother is not conditioned upon their good conduct or bad conduct.
Still have our guests in the studio and also in the Abuja studio on this matter. Let me let Nima jump in here. You want to say something now? Or
I wanted to, clarify, because, we have different exposures. For me, it's beyond the fear of the parents. It's to love your parents because it's like a cycle. The way it's preached from my own part is that it's a sign of mercy. So when you were helpless, you had your parents. And as soon as they grow older and become helpless, they have you. So it's a responsibility of love going round. It's something you must show. And then, we have a saying that Allah is Ar-Rahman, He's merciful. And if you must enjoy the mercy of God Himself, you must continue the circle of mercy. So your parents can become, less productive. They don't have as much wealth as you have. And they don't even have as much say in your life as they do, but they still have control over you because you owe that responsibility.
To add to what you just said, is it possible there's a fear to disobey the Quran? Because the Quran has said this. The consequence of not abiding by this book that I believe in is also a part of why you say, you know what, my Quran has said I must do this.
There's no such consequence as, as something that you cannot get forgiven over. In that circle.
What I'm hearing
but the first thing preached is that love as a sign of mercy. Mercy was the emphasis. And in weakness and in strength. Your mother birthed you, she nursed you for 2 years. You must. So the emphasis is mercy the way I see it. So I would say that a child lacks compassion who can stand up and beat their child. So where I'm from, in Edo, if a mother is trying to convince you to do something, she'll say, okay, kill me, Kuku beats me. Kuku beats me. She'll put head as if you would beat. But you will now be helpless. You hold your hand back as if, even to push her off you can't do because you must not be seen to lift your hand because you have the cultural consequence for that. So if it was something that there was no cultural consequence for, you do something like that. But if she's someone you must love and show mercy, no matter how small she becomes in her old age, she can still actually push you or beat you up, and you'll be like that, helpless, because I must show mercy to this person. So I'm a bit confused. You could say I'm trying to put it.
So I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. So I agree with you, but you see, that fear is.
So they've taught us so much love, right? That it's become a part of our makeup. We don't even think about it.
Yes.
And maybe the consequence as well is it become a part. We don't think about
the consequence.
So that was what I said. Papa was making
prayer.
That was what
they say your prayer, the
prayer
blessings of your parents.
Yes.
So that's the consequence that if I don't honor my parents, they will not pray for me, they will not bless me. That's a consequence.
Yeah. They don't even need
There's
to
also
pray.
that consequence.
They don't even need to utter a prayer.
Their heart
The condition of their heart is already a prayer ahead of you.
It takes your grace away or it brings
Yes.
your grace. But I was saying I understood from where you're coming from in the sense that when you now grow to learn to love, you cannot then bring to hurt or watch your loved ones in pain. Yeah. So no matter how strong you grow in strength and everything, you can't hurt.
Let me bring in our guest from Abuja. Sir, Mr. Dekunle, we've been discussing these various causes, but I'd like to go to how do we help parents? Because as I said, I gave an example previously that a man was having an engagement with his son, a teenager, I think was 17 years old. He took his father's best car and drove it right into the wall, bashed it, left the key there, and walked away because he was angry. So there are issues where parents are crying in silence because they don't even know where to start from. Who do they go to? Your children are uncontrollable. What do you think, as an expert in this, how would you begin to resolve this kind of situation?
I talked earlier about intentional parenting, okay? And it behoves every parent, every father, and every mother to be in that space, to be in that place where they are in the lives of their children. You see, I always say this, that as parents, we must have an engaging, deep intercourse with our children. And you see, that word intercourse is one word that has been stereotyped, okay, to mean sexual intercourse. But intercourse simply means intimacy, all right, with your children. You have to be in that place where you hear them even when they are not talking. You listen to their heartbeats even when they are not saying anything. You know, you understand their fears. Many years ago, I have a set of twins. When they were growing, I discovered that raising them, we always treat them two people as one. You know, they call me Baba Ibeji. They call my wife, their mom, Iya Beji. As though Ibeji is a child. And we treat them the same way. They sleep in the same room, sometimes on the same bed, they attend the same school. And I discovered that we are eroding their personality. What did I do? I decided one day that I'm going to be intentional about how I'm raising these boys. I decided to go on an outing with each of them part-time. And the first time I did that, it amazed me how each of them was able to talk to me. They were about 10, 11 then. How they were, the fears they were going through, their challenges, their future aspirations, which I had never before then listened to. And tears started dropping out of my eyes that, look, I was almost going to damage these children. And so I got to that space where I started understanding them as individuals. And that's what we need to do as parents. We have to get close to these children to know what their fears are, to know what their aspirations are, and what their challenges are. As kids, they're also going through stuff as much as us adults. Sometimes we believe that children don't have emotions. Even toddlers, they have emotions as much as we adults do. The only difference is that they're able to get over theirs faster than us. And then that's one bit of it.
Thank you very much,
There's
sir.
something I've discovered, which is, all right.
I'll come back to you, sir, because you said something very profound, intentional parenting, and I like what the example you gave, because many people kind of mumble everything together. Let me hear your thoughts first on how do we begin to help people who are in this situation.
Yeah, the first thing is to there are parents who are confused as well. There are parents who don't know their left from their right. They became parents because one has to have children. They were not properly foundationed on their own. So they didn't even know what it meant to disrespect parents and by extension disrespect wife or husband. Just live anyhow. The first thing is for the person to recalibrate himself. Why should your son respect you? Do you even know? Do you know what good it does for the child? Have you trained that child? So the intentional parenting comes with filling the child with those information that will be useful when Satan's attack comes to beat your parents. That is what will remind you. If you are empty, nothing you will not use, there's nothing you will use to respond. Because as at this point, nothing is sacred. Your father is not sacred. Even within the church, they are using mobile phones today. You sit, I've seen a man sitting with his son. The son was browsing WhatsApp in the church. And later, he was reading newspaper. That's the man that's, tomorrow, what will be the consequence if that son have any cause to disagree with him? The son will tell him, will you be able to tell your son to reverence God when in the house of his worship, you were reading newspaper as the father, he was browsing WhatsApp? So intentional parenting, as they said, is absolutely necessary because that is our culture. Culturally, we Africans, we intentionally brought up children. We informed them and created the mystery of fear as a tool of control.
Fear.
Let's even talk
What is missing is that society is gone. People misbehave because they don't fear consequences.
Let's talk about how
Meanwhile, the consequence is with you as you do it.
Right.
you know how we raise children culturally, and many people have talked about how our parents have raised us or our parents' parents. And one of the things that you'd hear over time, many people say, is that we are too strict, almost very harsh parenting. And if as Christians, if we refer to harsh parenting, actually, Ephesians 6:4, if we refer to that, where it says, Father, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. And many people in Nigeria and Africa, when they tell you some of the harsh parenting they received from their parents, and you're surprised. Many of us were surprised we're saying today, or we're surprised that this country is with money. Because it was provocation,
Absolutely.
So how is, and my question is, a parent that has done that feels, I've done it the traditional way, cultural way, I have done the right thing, I have been so harsh, I've been so disciplined, and yet I have a child that is standing up to me and putting his hand in my face.
Yes, that's true. But everything in life must be done in moderation. If those who were extremely harsh have now learned that they were too harsh, because the truth is this.
The truth is that they haven't learned. They still believe.
You say African cultural upbringing is not harsh, shouldn't be harsh. Shouldn't be.
It's not harsh.
Yes, because what you are saying today that you are happy and you are grateful, you are saying, means that the result is right. but you are wishing you got a different type and quality.
Yeah.
But just take note, in life, I hear Morayo every day talking about biscuits and how she was beaten. And she has said this 2-3 times. I said, this thing has stuck with her.
Oh,
She
stop.
felt it was extreme. But Morayo is a delight. Listen, no, hold on. It's a delight.
You also disagree.
No,
Let me disagree.
You will, but I'm just saying that what you consider, because every child is brought into this world as a messenger, coming here to do something. Michael Jackson told us a story that the father was excessively harsh towards him, but he became the biggest star of the family. So in life, parents are influenced. You call it trauma because, you know why? You know, scientists have a way of bringing things out.
Let me explain.
I will let you break. Let me let our guest in Abuja if he agrees with this.
Yes.
Mr. Adekunle, are you there? Do you agree with Mr. Katuba?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, let me hear your thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello?
Let me hear your thoughts
Come
on
again?
do you agree with, do you agree with, if you do agree, why do you agree with him?
Okay. Now, I won't say I agree or disagree, but let me put it this way. What seems to be in discussion here is about parenting styles, which I mentioned earlier. All right, and there are 4 of them. There are four styles. The authoritarian parenting style is the one we seem to be talking about here, which incidentally happened to be the style deployed by my late dad in raising us. The authoritarian parent is that parent who is extremely high on discipline, but very low in affection, all right, and relationship. Now you have the uninvolved parent. Those ones are completely absent in the lives of their children. And these are the parents, they are the worst. They are the ones that have abdicated their responsibility and are completely absent in the lives of their parents. Then you have the permissive ones, the guys who are high on relationship, but very low on discipline. And it's a danger because they lavish the child with everything the child needs and wants, but when it comes to discipline and enforcing discipline, the child is lacking. They are lacking in that space. And then the one recommended is the authoritative, where you balance both discipline and love, relationship, and affection. And that's what I think your guest is trying to say. That look, when you have parents who feel their harsh parenting style has not worked, it's time to move away from there and change. And so I will always recommend a situation where you are strict to an extent reasonable on your children, yet you lavish them with the affection that they need. You balance both. That is what makes a well-rounded and robust child.
All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Adekunle. Now let me come to Mariam.
Yes, I was going to say that this harsh parenting, you're just being nice today. Harsh parenting is a Nigerian reality that we talk about so much that a lot of us are saying, I'm doing it differently because of how it impacted my life. So I think that we're just
It affected it negatively?
Yes, it had some negative impact on, the way a child was born. So the way a person became
the damage.
Where a person became an adult, to the point that they had to take themselves through therapy or educated themselves, re-educated themselves, and so they've decided, I'll do it differently so that the impact of that kind of harsh parenting would not affect my child. So that shows a person who's shown growth. But in showing growth, we will not deny the fact that we have come from parenting that was not done right. We also understand that you only do what you can, given the information or the education that you have at the time, the knowledge that you have. We also have parents who are better grandparents who said, if I had known, the things that I know now, I would have done this parenting differently. So I feel that we should acknowledge that there's a parenting style in Nigeria and in Africa that can have a negative impact on a person, and there are things we need to do differently.
That's where I disagree with you, because you don't disarm us in order to promote a style that is alien to us.
bless you, sir.
Well, you are trying to
agree with you.
disarm us. You are trying to first demonize our God-given instinct and influence for the future that we do not know.
I don't understand this.
You don't understand.
I'm getting.
No, I know. I don't
Can I
get
just
it.
come in?
Yes.
I don't believe African parenting is harsh. So in a foreign parents that we see, for instance, you want to tell a child, "Oh, stop that, don't be silly." My father would just say, "Ha, gezadeke, stop being foolish." Straight up. And sometimes he'll tell you, "Don't be a big fool. Udufuki, don't be a big fool." So that when you will now grade that, maybe that tantrum you were throwing or that embarrassment you just saw at the level with the weights that he wants you to see it. And he did not need to use a cane. For weeks, I'll be going around interpreting the words first that I'm just learning in Esako, and then interpreting the meaning and then associating it with what the example was that, it was at the time. But imagine he was saying to me, "Don't be silly with my raised in Lagos." I would have been, such levity.
Can we also to add
African parenting was straight, blunt parenting, not necessarily harsh, except you're looking at it with a mirror from another.
Okay, so
Now, let me remind us of a video that we saw. I'm sure we all saw that video. It's an old video of Michelle Obama being interviewed by one of the
Yes.
where she was talking about parenting. And you're saying that children should be able to express themselves. And I said, no, is it friends?
She said, children should be your friends.
Yes, children be your friends. She was saying that your child should not be your friend because she believes that in the home, you learn all the various aspects of personalities from the house. So I'm not going to be nice to you because outside you're going to see people that are going to be nice to you. I'll be kind to you because you also meet people that will be kind. So all the various things you're possible to meet in life, I will give it to you at home. I can't just be your friend and just accept you to do anything. I must be a parent. But where I hear Mariam saying that, how do we find a middle ground? Yes, we agree it should be a bit strict, but also we also must ensure that their emotional well-being is not...
That, yes, and that's the problem I feel with even beyond parenting with Africa, with Nigeria, is that to deny a reality just so that we can look good is a dangerous step that we take in dealing with many things. The sort of parenting, we have discussed it so much in churches, in schools, because it's something that has impacted us. We have said that abroad, and I'm not doing this to compare, but let me use this. Abroad, they are inventing things, they are doing things, even with their style of parenting. And yet, with our own harsh, these are things that we say, even with our own harsh parenting, we don't see our children turn out to be inquisitive and asking and confident. We have a sort of parenting that almost makes a child lack confidence, are afraid to speak up for themselves because how dare you? But we're now learning that we can teach our children some form of confidence and respect. So to say that we don't have that, I'm just looking for a better word to say.
Okay,
I think
we did not say.
I also disagree that we did not take our kids' confidence. No. It is African culture to
Nima, you're
teach.
talking about your own household.
No.
Yes.
But I'm even talking the example my grandfather was. We taught our kids to respectfully disagree. There must be respect in every form of communication.
Nima,
it was not the lack of responsibility.
Okay. That's not the
It's not that lack.
allowed
So
to
the way it's portrayed now, it's almost like the African ways did not grow out of research. We were a people with our ways and culture. And we raised, imagine, for instance, when you're going off to school, your parents will see you off to school. But African parents will say, "Run to your man at the bus," and you're off.
What does that mean?
Remember the child of whom you are. Do not spoil the family. Say they built a pedigree and they gave you that.
Okay.
And you not expect
the
you to
argument
do
of
it.
invention is what I want to deal with. You are trying to... the first thing is, if you don't have a place you are standing on, you can't relate with anyone else.
Okay.
The invention of the West is not the invention of Africa. You should find your invention within your culture, but you left it. You are saying you learned in school and you learned in church. These are foreign ideas. You didn't learn anything African in those places. So you are using that mirror to mirror yourself. Your invention is embedded in your way, which you did not allow to grow. No one found food for us. We found our food. We found the yam. We found it was invention, but we didn't respect it. So just know that the Arabs have a way they bring up their children. The Asians have the way they bring up their children. The Europeans, we must have our way in order for us to relate with the world.
But it's already polluted.
You say so. We are talking. No, let's first, when we agree, then we train ourselves. You don't train me confused, telling me that what I stand on is wrong. What we are doing is we've not understood what we are even doing.
So here is my own worry, and I agree with you. I agree with you that Africa wasn't left to evolve into its own self, and there is a lot of infiltration of pollution, ideas that seem to be polluting our essence of who we are. And you don't see that as much with the Middle East. They fought to hold on to who they are, their own identity. The Indians too struggle to hold on to their identity. Majority of Africans cannot say this is our identity, because if you trace it back, even what we call our heritage is highly influenced by everything that we have accepted, but based on where we are. And the children we are raising, who are not children for Africa, but children for the world. The majority of Nigerian children probably they are working in an economy that is built by the world, with innovation built by the world. We cannot isolate ourselves in terms of how we feel this is how we should be done. We can decide as a country what our vision is. We can decide as a country, this is kind of children we are raising. Japanese have done it. They maintain their culture, building innovation, preserving history, and yet being innovative. How do we marry that in the traumatic world we're living in? Majority, I don't agree with Nima in terms of how we're raising children. I feel like we have raised a lot of traumatized adults who are struggling to understand themselves and their trauma, who are reacting. I know the way I grew up. If you raise her like this, I will dodge. That's trauma. I shouldn't be dodging when you raise her to high-five me. That means that I've been used to somebody trying to beat me. At a point in my life, I went through sexual molestation. When a man touches me, I would freeze. I would have goosebumps all over. That's trauma. Many adults have been raised in trauma in Africa, and we feel like that is normal. It's not. Let's face the facts.
Based on what facts?
Based on what let me, before I let you respond, let me come to Mr. Adekunle. Mr. Adekunle, any additional thoughts on this before I go on a break? A break?
Yes. I mean, this is really getting very interesting. I need to sound a caution here, in my opinion, that, you see, extremism as an index of expression is an egregious error. How do I mean? When you tend or seem to argue in favor of a position to the extreme, then it's something that should be jettisoned. Now, this is it. When you're talking about the African way or the Nigerian way or the cultural way of raising children in Africa, it is harsh and all of that. I would agree to an extent that it stifles the self-confidence and the expressiveness of children, which is something we must not continue to encourage. We must move away from there, okay? A situation where we are so authoritarian on our children such that they live in perpetual fear and they are bereft of expression. Going back to the Western side too, I would say that they are living in the other extreme of a laissez-faire approach to parenting, where they believe that every little thing you do is eroding the self-esteem, that's what they call it, of the children, and the confidence of the children. And for me, it has led them to the rot that they are seeing in their society. I hope you know that today in Canada, all right, it is bad enough. It is bad enough that the LGBT society in the West is thriving. Now in Canada, they have taken it a notch higher, that your child of whatever age has the right to determine the gender or the transgender or whatever they call it that he wants or she wants to choose. And as a parent, you don't have the right. As a matter of fact, they have criminalized. I wrote a piece on it recently. I call it criminalizing parenting. You cannot counsel your child otherwise. A church cannot preach against it. No Bible study must talk against it, because they know that churches are doing a lot in that regard. So they have criminalized all of these things simply in the guise of giving a voice to the child. What kind of society is that? And so for me, there should be a balance between that extreme of the African harsh type of parenting and the laissez-faire of parenting that you see in the West.
All right, sir. Thank you. Let me come to Mr. Kakutu, because I have to wrap up everything. Let me let you, your general thoughts on this.
My general thought is that when a society, everything you see as a decadence started somewhere, we must not, look down upon our given instincts and God's ways of life. We must develop them. Everything you see today is developed. The plane was developed. Our parenting style, the one she described, could be the wrong types, we could improve upon them. Then finally, to children who are listening and parents, if you have your son or your child, because you say you want to do civilized upbringing, and your child is talking to you confrontationally without respect, as if you are colleagues or pals, begin to correct that child before he gets out of hand. Because that type of behavior will surely lead the child to begin to see you not as a parent, but as a colleague with whom he can banter words and exchange blows.
Let's take a few comments before we wrap up. We have just a minute left.
Ajura Walu says, any child that beats his or her parents is already cursed. And then
Discuss that cost part, but go ahead.
Rabiat Abbas says, good morning, ladies. May God not let us see evil. It is not normal, but sometimes the children who want to defend their mother. Let us train our children in the fear of God. Auntie Mariah, I was the lady that sang during the walkout. How can I get my reward, please? Rabiat Abbas.
Okay, Ajetomobi says, he quoted the Leviticus 29 and I don't know what COL means in the Bible anymore. But
Colossians.
Deuteronomy 21:18 as well. And he said, sisters, any child disrespect his or her parents will surely face the consequences. No sentiments about that. When I was young, I made a mistake and my father corrected me. I grumbled and my brother chastised me. Years later, my son did the same to me. And, okay, you took Rabiat Abbas already.
I have NB. NB says, great topic. On no occasion should a child ever raise their hands on their parents, no matter what. In the spirit of honoring the mother and the father, parents should also stop testing that commandment by them trying to hit their adult offspring.
Yes, Tula also says that the parents should not, he quoted the Bible, he said the Bible said to parents, do not provoke the children to anger. So I think everybody should maintain.
All right, we have to wrap up on it, but I think we all agree that it is wrong for children to beat their parents. But more importantly, if you're a parent in this situation, seek help. There's got to be counseling on both for your children and yourself, because as Nima said earlier, we have to nip it in the bud. Once it happens, it shouldn't happen again. So you find counseling and find some kind of therapy to help you to stop it so it doesn't go beyond what happened. Okay, that's all we can take on today's show. Thank you.